You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 249 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. Today we're heading to Dumfries and Galloway, or Wigtonshire to be precise, to meet dairy, pigs and beef farmer Rory Christie. Rory and his brother Gregor run a 200 sow pig business and an 1100 cow dairy enterprise. Rory manages the dairy and his brother is in charge of the pigs. The farm uses the latest genetic testing, AI and embryo transfer to improve the herd's health and performance. Rory was the founding chair of the Milk Suppliers Association and is vice chair of the Scottish Agricultural Organisations Society. He studied agriculture at Edinburgh University before returning to the family farm. Was all that right, Rory? Welcome to Meet the Farmers.
Nice to meet you, farmers. Yeah, that's all right. That's all correct.
So, let's start at the beginning. You are the third generation of your family to farm. So I wondered if you could just give us some context behind the business, first of all, some history of it, and give us an idea of how it's changed over time.
So I am the third generation to farm here where we currently farm, but my great-grandfather was also a farmer, was the fourth generation. And on the farming side of the family, he was a hill shepherd in designs of Argyll, and then a tenant farmer at Luss, a farm called Hill of Cumstradden, which is right in the side of the Lochland. And then my grandfather went off to university, which maybe was unusual in those days, and he studied agriculture and then moved his way around various jobs in the UK, and he ended up specialising in the repair of ailing estates. And my father was born in Norfolk and my uncle born in Yorkshire. And I took a job in Wigtonshire for the family called the Maxwells, who, I don't know if you remember, Gavin Maxwell, who wrote the book Ring of Brightwater. Anyway, he took a job with their family and helped them recover their estate to some extent. I ended up buying a chunk of it, and he did that with by raising some equity capital, I guess, with some local businessmen, local doctor friend, and Lord David Stewart of Butte fame, I guess, walked from estate. So anyway, he was a very progressive farmer. He could see an opportunity from early potatoes and pigs, because there was lots of whey, which comes from all the little cheese factories that were around about. He did a pretty big business based on intensive livestock production with pigs and poultry and broiler chickens in the 50s. And dairy cows. We have a very mild climate because we farm in the very southwest of Scotland. If you want to be really precise, it's in the Mackers area, which is a low-lying grassy area, I guess. And then so the business progressed for us today, which is we farm a couple of thousand acres. We have 1,100 milking cows, 200 sows. It's a little small because we used to have 1,100 sows. Wow. We don't have chickens anymore. We went through a period and there was quite a few changes in the 90s, I guess. So it's supposedly every animal disaster in every intensive livestock disaster occurred in the 90s, from BSE to salmonella, all these things cut. And it happened to us, the generational change as well. So it was quite a challenging time for our family. Anyway, we're out all the time, and my brother and I run the business. And as you rightly said, I wanted to look after cows and I went after the pigs. And then we come together monthly and talk about policy and how much money we have or don't have, sort out the way forward.
We'll dig more into the business as we go on, but I wondered if we could turn to, I suppose, the geography, the farming landscape of your part of Scotland. Give us an idea of, it's a well-known, for lots of listeners might know it as a well-known dairy area, but give us an idea of the landscape.
So we set a peninsula that sits out into the Irish Sea. So our farm runs right down to the coast. If our cows are grazing the fields, they are right beside the high tide mark. It's rolling, green, round, lots of grass, and our entire farm is grass. Lots of trees that are windswept, you might say, pointing backwards because the wind is coming in off the west, blowing them in that particular direction. It's never really that cold, and it's never really that warm. Today, in our middle of British weather, it's about 13 degrees. But it can be 25, and it can be -2 or 3. But it's usually within that range. And it rains plenty. We get a metre or 40 inches of rain in old money.
Wow.
And it's low-lying, green pastoral land. But it's very, very rural. We're 100 miles from Glasgow. We're 100 miles from Carlisle. And so when you start at the highest hill around our farm, you can see the 5 kingdoms. The Tidal Region, then you've got the Isle of Man, Scotland, Ireland, of course the Kingdom of Heaven, if you look up the
Cool. You mentioned a little bit, or you insinuated there about this season, which has been challenging for all farms wherever you are. But I mean, what's your story been for this year?
Oh, just what's the same as everybody else. It's been raining and it's not been very warm. And I think in the West we're more used to it, or we're able to deal with it. And I think it's actually probably worse for farmers in the West and East of the UK who are used to good dry weather. It's just been a bit wetter for us than normal. And that makes things challenging. And it's the biggest issue is it's totally inconsistent. We haven't had 24 hours, hardly in 2 back-to-back dry days. And if there's rained enough to stop you, as I put it. And I'm still trying to get winter forage crops sown. And I need 3 or 4 bad days to do it, and I'm not going to get them.
Let's talk about the dairy and your herd first of all. Tell us a bit about your system and how it works.
So we are pastoral dairy farmers, meaning the produce are outside in the field eating grass. In Dumfries we see in Southern Ireland, Southwest Wales, Southwest England, and of course New Zealand. It is the Wigtonshire system. We like to think that it started here and spread out into the world from here. I think you would like to argue different, but come ahead. So our cows eat 90% grass. We buy some meal to help them recover from calving and help them peak in their milk yield in around May. Our entire farm is now broken up into 10-hectare blocks, and we measure the grass every week, twice a week in fact, and then we allocate the amount of the grass, kilos of dry matter, and cows. We can't budget. We understand how much grass we have all the time, and then we allocate that to the number of mouths we have to feed. So it's a very precise grazing system.
Yeah, and you mentioned the business as a whole seems to have shifted quite a bit over time. You're currently sitting around about, is it 1,100, 1,200 head?
We have 1,120 or something this year.
Yeah,
I've had 1,500, but as many as 1,500 in the past. And I did start with 500 across 4 different milking parlours. And those tough economic times in the 90s, 2000s, I rationalised and we reinvested, getting an idea to reinvest in business, my father. And that's when we became specialists in what we do. We're very much specialist spring-block calvers when it comes to dairy farming. And that allowed us, we didn't have a lot of capital available, that allowed us to make best use of our land and then ability to grow grass because it's a mining time of year. Our climate is warmed up by the Gulf Stream, which wishes up the west coast of the UK. And keeps our weather moderate and moderate. So that allows to specialist grassland farmers, basically.
Okay. And the pigs?
Yeah. It's all, in many ways, it's always been about the milk, because the pig business grew because of all the dairy farming going on around about us. Because all this cheese was being made. And a byproduct of cheese making is whey, which you can feed to pigs on an ad libitum basis. So my grandfather built this huge business based in pigs. Based on feeding pigs whey. And that would create a lot of bounces fizz. And believe it or not, we do. For many years, sold pigs to Walls. And if you remember Walls ice cream, well, now in the old days, not today, the fat that was in Wall's ice cream, I'm pretty sure was pig fat, not dairy
I was going to say,
fat.
I'm pretty sure I've heard that story before.
Yeah, it's true.
I have wondered, there is truth in that, is there?
Yeah, they loved their pigs. They wanted their pigs as fat as they could be because they made sausages and ice cream. So, well, that's what I was told. Yeah. So we used to install these pigs to walls. Anyway, over time, when you have a large number of animals in a small space for a long time, the thing that pigs kind of disease became a problem, and then there was less of the changes in how you keep them, the barn stalls and stuff. So basically, our pig unit was at the end of his life, and we reinvested in pig unit, built a brand new pig unit, and now he is only 200 sows. But believe it or not, from 200 sows, we sell we sell 30 pigs per sow per year. And in 2011, when we closed the old place, we were only selling 18 pigs per sow. So we have jumped huge efficiency. And Gregor remains very good at what he does, and it's a very intensive output-based system. Extremely high welfare, extremely high output.
That's a significant increase in output. What does he put that down to?
Genetic development. And having the right facilities to be able to optimise the genetic potential of those animals. What does the farmer need? It needs prolificity. It needs lots and lots of pigs born, and lots of pigs that are healthy, and lots of pigs that can grow very fast. We built a brand new unit based on a Danish model, and we filled it with Danish pigs. Okay. And so we have world-beating or Danish-beating production.
And dare I say, I mean, that's the thing that ties both the pig enterprise and your dairy enterprise together. It has been your focus on genetics. Has that been a long-standing focus?
Yeah. It certainly has. On the dairy side, we always understood you had to have good cows. My grandfather, when they would have Ayrshire cows here, and then he converted it to Friesian. And to do that, he bought the highest yielding herd of Friesian cows in England at the time. And anyway, with he was involved in the development of the Scottish marketing AI stuff. And then as time went on, we crossbred our cows because we went down this Kiwi type system, and we crossed these Holstein cows to Jerseys, and we crossbred cows. And then, of course, now I help run a small genetics project, which is allowed us to DNA profile our herd. And what's unusual about that is it's for crossbred cows. So we have what's called crossbred SNP key, which is basically the key that allows you to unlock the pattern to understand the genetic profile of those animals, and we were able to rank our female cows. So pigs have exactly the same indexing system.
Okay.
We understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's index-based breeding decisions that allow us to make heifer cows and better sows.
Meet the Farmers is brought to you by Rural Pod Media, the only podcast production agency to specialise in the rural sector. We're on a mission to make rural stories mainstream and help businesses, organisations and communities like you tell your story through podcasting. Podcasting is a fantastic way of connecting with your audience, whoever that might be, getting your message out there and networking with leaders in your niche. Rural Pod Media can help you by launching your new podcast or helping you with the technical side. We also provide podcast training and an audit service if you already have a podcast. You're not sure where to take it to next. For more information or to book a call, visit ruralpodmedia.co.uk. That's ruralpodmedia.co.uk. That links us quite nicely towards the Milk Suppliers Association, which you're a founding chair of. MSA, for anyone who doesn't know, so it's a dairy co-op made up of 131 dairy farmers based throughout southwest Scotland, supplying approximately 210 million litres of milk per year to the creamery at Stranraer, which is owned by Lactalis, which is the largest European milk processor. Tell us a little bit more about the Milk Suppliers Association, Rory, and how and why it developed.
It's a bit of a long story. It started in reverse. Lactalis are now the biggest cheese producer in the world, with a turnover of €29 billion. It really the whole story centres around the factory in Stranraer, which used to be called the Galloway Creamery. Back in the day, was owned by the Milk Marketing Board, and it nearly closed, or it was shut down. And a group of local farmers opened it. One of those farmers was my father, reopened it. And as time went on, the partners who were involved in that business sold out their shares, and eventually Lactalis, this cheese giant, bought it. And so farmers no longer had any direct input to that factory. And at the time, I'd always said my grandfather and father had been involved in the NFU. It's activism, you might call it, for most of their career. And I said I wouldn't do it. I didn't want to get involved in such things. I felt that it had taken the focus off our business. Anyway, lo and behold, I get sucked in. I'd been doing some work with NFU, and I started to learn about producer representation. And there was a producer committee at Stranraer who would meet and talk with Lactalis each month about the milk price. And I got involved in that, and I quite quickly realised my learning at the same time, parallel learning with the union about contract legislation and producer representation was happening. And I realised that actually I don't have the mandate to speak in behalf of these farmers. I was going in and literally battering the table, banging the table. We need another penny for our milk. And my good friend Peter Simpson and I would go in and create merry havoc, merry hell with the manager of the creamery. We're not paying us enough, basically. And I did question in some of my more passionate moments, is this right? Do the farmers actually believe this or not? We did. We didn't have mandate, though, on their behalf. So I also, along with NFU, started to work with SAOS, Scottish Agricultural Organisation Society, and they basically help people cooperate. They help farmers who are in cooperation stay in cooperation. Those that want to be in cooperation form their little co-ops, and they also help those that aren't currently cooperating and not in a cooperative cooperate. It's really unique and organisation that helps solve problems in Scotland. So I'd gone to them and said, look, how do we sort this out? I want to have a proper representative body here, and they helped me template. This is it. You need to form a constituted association. And we had to get a group of the believers that this happened, that this needed to happen, the founding farmers of the MSA, and we went out and spoke to farmers, and we said, look, we think this is what we should do. And we did the same with Lactalis, to be fair. We went to them and said, look, we think you'd be much better dealing with a professional organisation, professional farmers who can pool the resource, and so that when we're bashing on the table, you know that we're actually informed and we're not just doing it because we enjoy ranting at you. So anyway, cut a long story short, we became an association. We eventually became a co-op, and now we're a co-op with dairy producer organisation status, of which there are only 3. We were the second in the UK. So we look after the farmers selling their milk to the factory in Stranraer. And they are in Dumfries and Galloway and Ayrshire. And there's, as you said, around, not quite as many as 131 now, I think just over 100.
Stranraer produces a range of cheddars, including some brands that people will recognise for sure. Seriously Strong, Galloway, McClelland. And for anyone who doesn't follow the dairy news at the moment, probably won't know quite how much investment is going into the sector, especially with processing at the moment. Arla, for one, might be mentioned as putting quite fairly significant investment into their processing at the moment. Rory, why is so much investment happening in dairy at the moment?
People must think it's good business. Milk or dairy is extremely nutritious, extremely dense, nutritionally packed food that there's a good market for. And you need to be very efficient at it because it's a challenging market. It's very competitive. So to get a competitive edge, you need to make sure you've got the best of kit. You need to be looking at product development. And certainly the UK is, I would say, a world leader low carbon footprint. Really boring stuff, but Scope 3 compliance, we do low Scope 3 milk. And actually, we've got one thing, the one thing that annoys us all as farmers is we got water. Actually Europe's pretty tight for water. And we're not. And you could not get a better milk hen than South West Scotland to invest in, because we can quite readily take the sun's energy and its rain and turn it into human edible fat and protein, and that's effectively what milk is. And we don't need to drill down to get that water. We've got really healthy soil, and we've got plenty of it. So we are very rich natural resource. And I think these companies are seeing that, and they're seeing that we can do it in a planet-friendly way, and so they're investing. And if you notice, Muller are now investing heavily as well, so I can't say it's only the co-ops, but First Milk and Arla have invested heavily. So the farmers are vertically integrating. They have the supply chain, from farm right through to processing and selling. They're selling the product rather than just selling raw milk. Not the case in my case. We are a marketing co-op effectively. We don't own any MSA, don't own any stainless steel.
In terms of challenges and opportunities for the business, if you were to sort of pick out a few things, I mean, you've already mentioned labour there, but where would you see the land lying in terms of your key challenges, but also opportunities?
Threats and opportunities are kind of the same thing in many ways, but labour remains a problem because we don't have stable government, and what they do with immigration law and visas in 3 years' time, and my guys' visas need to be renewed, is very worrying. So we have no clarity on that. We don't have reliable government on that front. Meeting compliance is probably going to be our biggest challenge. We're ahead of the game. We've invested, and we always do take a long view, and so I'm confident we'll be able to meet it easily. But it's the cost of meeting it. The biggest challenge remains the fact that we get paid mostly in and around the cost of production. It's utterly ridiculous. And the biggest challenge is the fact that you're paid for the cost of producing milk, not for the cost of looking after our land and the environment. And that's why biodiversity, that's why the environment has suffered so much, because people have not paid for that element. They paid for me to put the cows into the field and buy the feeding for them and pay for the labour and pay for the red diesel that the tractors got, but they don't pay for any of the other stuff. So the other stuff has gone by the wayside. And now we are expected to invest in biodiversity, in low-carbon farming, and everybody's saying, oh, well, just got to take it out of milk price. The equation doesn't work. So my message is, you can allow the farmers to keep going out of business and slowly stop and dwindle away, and farming becomes more and more corporate, bigger and bigger and bigger farms. And you'll lose diversity of system, diversity of people. And if you really don't want factory farming of the American scale, then you have to do something different.
I mean, there remains some uncertainty as to the Scottish post-Brexit sort of ag support system, where we're going to look in sort of the position going forwards. Would your preference, based on what you've been saying, would your preference be for those more environmental goods to be paid for on a state format, or to be coming out of the market in some way?
I'd rather it came out of the market. I get about penny and a half's worth of subsidy at the moment. And believe me, I couldn't really do without it. I need it. So I'm not going to say let's wipe away subsidy. But the state wants control. So therefore, it should pay for that. I would rather see food, because the simple fact is the state will not pay enough. They are going to tinker. They are going to tinker with environmental payments that will go not very far to create actually proper change. And so it has to be come from the market ultimately. But yeah, we'll see what happens in Scotland. If we're going to have subsidy, if you want to call it that, or support, as they like to call it. They paid us to to allow us to be efficient in what we do. Capital investment, things I quite happily invest in a power plant, whether that be anaerobic digestion or some kind of advanced plant that allow me to do hydrogen. I've already got some renewables. I would have more of them, but they're extremely expensive, and in relation to cost of electricity, they're too dear. So electricity, £1 a kilowatt, it actually totally changes its equation when it comes to return on capital. But at 25 pence a kilowatt, they're all too expensive, and nobody will invest in them without some help, unless you're a bit mad like me who invests ahead of the curve. But I think that kind of thing would be. There's a big question about rural land use and what and balancing that and food security.
Let's turn towards a bit more about you, I suppose. I'm interested in your life growing up on the farm. I mean, you've already mentioned that the farm is fairly remote. It's a very rural location. So just tell us a little bit about your childhood in that sort of context, and when you decided that farming was the route for you.
I don't really know. I mean, my childhood was fairly normal. Well, what is normal? I went cycling around the place with my best pal. We played in the woods and made forts, and had a rare old time of it. And we watched the Dukes of Hazzard in the A-Team. And why did we find that so interesting? Well, because actually I was obsessed with motorsport because my dad was a rally driver. And actually I didn't think much about farming at all. I thought about being the next world rally champion. And I spent most of my first 20 years of life dreaming about being that. Farming, I didn't really get on so great at school. I got what I needed to get to go and do a diploma. My mum and dad didn't get on that well, and education was a case of I didn't, just like many farming kids, I didn't particularly like school. So anyway, I went off and did a diploma in Edinburgh, which was great fun. And I made some of my great best friends, great friends. And we had a good old time drinking an awful lot of beer, mostly. I suppose I always had, you're never away from the farm as a farm child, you're just on the farm. And I went about with my father, and I always had a sense of that we had a big business and it was complicated and there was lots going on. So I came home and drove a tractor, a Universal 45 horsepower. We seemed to make silage from June to September, and maybe before that I was working what they called a turbotiller from April to June. So did all that kind of stuff, and I quickly wanted to be in charge, I guess. I had a knack for seeing systems and understanding that change needed to happen. But it's hardly a surprise because that's what I watched my father and grandfather do. I just did what they did. They didn't milk the cows every day themselves. They went about telling people what to do and organising things. So what I am is an organiser. An organiser and a planner. Some would say a delegator. And that's, I delegate everything I possibly can away from myself. But I also saw that you needed good people. And we've always, in the main, had good people. And some amazing people helped my father and grandfather build a business. And I've always understood that you can't do it yourself. It took me a while to transition away from Edinburgh, a couple of years of trying to go back there every second weekend or every weekend. And the rally driving stopped when I was about 21. I was Scottish champion when I was Scottish junior champion when I was 20, I think, something like that. But farming got too expensive. We were pretty much in economic decline in the late 90s. And I actually took the decision to stop. You couldn't keep living like a rock star. So responsibility and duty have always been something that I have taken seriously and continue to take seriously.
I was going to say the 90s, as you've said a few times, they were tough years. When would you say have been? When was if you can pin it down to a year, that would be amazing. But I mean, almost your best farming year and your most challenging farming year, or just period of farming. Be interested in that.
Best farming year, economically, we had a good year in 2022 or 3 because we, for the first time, had a good milk price. and a reasonable pig price at the same time. It was a pretty difficult period from 2012 to 2018, and quite difficult. With all that reinvestment on the go, I suppose the most difficult period would be in around 2012 to 2015. With all that investment, we'd borrowed a huge amount of money, and we were having to try and pay that back, but we weren't getting the output. Plus, we had to borrow. Dead money was to borrow by shareholders. My dad died as well. So that was probably the most difficult period, trying to work out how the hell we're going to pay it all back and get performance up to where it needed to be. You also deal with all the emotional churn that when one generation passes to the next. But we I have to say, we did it, and we've done it well. I've got a good relationship with all my siblings, and so all that's been pretty successful, yeah.
Looking ahead to the future, who knows what's going to happen? But your future plans for the farm, where do you see the future of the farm?
To continue to get better at what it does. I'm 50 this year, and it's hard to see what the future is at the moment. I've got two daughters who are both away. One's studying agriculture in Newcastle, and one's going to study rural business in Edinburgh. And I'm thinking about how they're going to be involved or not involved. I don't no clarity in that. I love building, I love projects. If I could just go and start taking farms on next door and putting cows on and doing lots of milking farms or milking systems, I probably would. But the reality is that we have still got a lot of debt. I would like to create some cash, and dairy farming is challenging. It's not an easy business model to make work. So I think I may well have enough eggs in one basket with that one. Well, you never know. An opportunity comes, I'll take it. I need to have plenty to keep me busy because I'm fairly driven.
We're going to move on to the quick questions, which have absolutely nothing to do with farming. Some quick fire answers here, and these are completely random. First is football or rugby?
Rugby.
Second, first music you bought?
All I Can Tire by Paul McCartney.
And third, dream holiday if you could ever get away from the farm?
Yeah. Oh, I go exploring. So I don't think I have a dream. I just like going on holiday. I had a fantastic holiday last year. I didn't think I would go cruising. I went cruising with a bunch of pals, and I had the best laugh ever. And I thoroughly enjoyed
nice.
that.
Where did you go?
Caribbean.
Nice.
Yeah. So we're going to do that again in 25. So that'll be fun. But no, there's so much I want to do. I want to see Africa. I want to see South America. It's limitless. I desire to travel. I just need to get going. You're planning farming, you create a bit more time so I can go and do it.
Yeah, it's the usual issue for those of us who want to do lots of stuff, is never enough time. The final questions, Rory. The first is, if you had a message for the public, any message, what would it be?
Think about your food and the people that make it.
And your message for your fellow farmers?
You're not competing against each other. You need to stick together. You need to cooperate. And if you work together, you'll actually get a better future.
Super. Rory, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been really interesting to hear more about your story. So, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
That is it for today. Huge thanks to my guest, Rory Christie, for coming on the show. Thank you also for listening. Please share this episode on your socials. Tell someone you know about the podcast. We're still growing, and it's always good to see more people listening. But please share it to another farmer or someone who you think will enjoy it. Don't forget to check out our sister show as well, Rural Business Focus. You can find that on whichever platform you're listening to this show. Next time, we'll be in Worcestershire meeting the farm manager of Overbury Farms, Jake Freestone. But for now, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers, and thank you very much for listening.